Hello and welcome to the third video in the English Basic Composition Skills series. In this video we're going to be looking at the use of commas in the English language. Now before we move on, it's important to say that commas can be used with lots of different types of clauses and sentences, and really it's impossible to list every single one during the course of this presentation, but we will be taking a look at some of the important ways in which we use commas, and also some of the important errors to avoid when we are constructing sentences in the English language. So let's begin by looking at the way in which we can use commas to separate lists of things. In the first example here, you can see that we have three languages and we are using commas to separate those from each other. Very commonly people don't use the comma in something before the and, but if we had a list of four things it would work in exactly the same way. We might say she speaks French, English, German, and Chinese. The conjunction that we use does not have to be the word and. In the second example we have or. We still have a list of three things which you can separate using commas. Next, and I think this is possibly the most important way in which we use commas, is to join clauses together using commas in conjunction with coordinating conjunctions. We often refer to these conjunctions using Fanboy's acronym because for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so, the first letters of those words can be joined together to create the word fanboys. And we can see with the two examples down at the bottom, this is how we do it. After our first clause, we can see here we have a subject and a verb and a complement in this clause here. We want to join it to another subject-verb clause, and we do so with a comma and then with a fanboys coordinating conjunction. The second example is exactly the same, using the conjunction so. Another very important use of commas is to separate out introductory words or phrases from the rest of the sentence. Often these introductory phrases are without subjects and or verbs. You can see from this first example here that we have an introductory phrase, due to high demand, and that is separated off from the main clause of the sentence using a comma, and then we begin our main clause with a subject and verb, and we go on from there. You can see exactly the same thing happening in the second and the third example, and you can see how important these types of sentences and their commas are in creating good writing and good paragraphs, because these introductory phrases are very commonly used when we are creating paragraphs. There are a number of sentences and a number of ways in which we want to separate information which is additional to the main sentence from the sentence itself, and we can do that by using commas. So both of these two examples have something in common. That is that the information between the two commas is not actually crucial to the grammatical correctness of the sentence. So if we remove it and have Trump wants to build a border wall, that is a perfectly good grammatical sentence in itself. Exactly the same thing can be said of the second example. Last year we visited Miami in order to go shopping. So the information between the two commas is information that we want to include that gives a further definition or a renaming of a noun, such as the current president of the USA is a renaming of Donald Trump. Or in the second example, what we have here is a non-defining relative clause. So now we're going to move on to look at three common sentence errors that people make when they are creating their sentences. Each one of those has a name. The first is called a sentence fragment, and this occurs when we have not created the sentence properly. we're missing some element. Very often this is either a subject or a verb. So if we look at the example on screen, the first sentence is perfectly fine. I went to Italy last summer. The problem is with the second sentence. Was a wonderful trip is incorrect because it is missing a subject. It's missing the subject it. And as such, it is a sentence fragment. We also create a sentence fragment when we have a clause which is completely dependent on the sentence beforehand. So here we have a sentence beginning with the word because, but it comes after a period and it's referring back to the first sentence for its meaning. Again, we can't do that, so that is another example of a sentence fragment. Let's move on to look at another common sentence error, this time the run-on sentence. This occurs when we have wanted to join two sentences together, but we have not done so correctly. So if we had, in this example here, a period after Rome, then we would have two perfectly correct but very short and very simple sentences. We might want to join those two sentences together to make something a little bit more complex, but what we cannot do is simply remove the period and expect that sentence to stand up and be fine on its own. What we need to do is think about using the fanboys conjunctions with a comma. So actually this sentence is missing both a comma and the fanboys conjunction but. That is a run-on sentence when both of these two elements are missing from the joining of two sentences together. And finally, we have a comma splice. And this is something pretty similar to a run-on sentence, but the difference is that here we have included a comma. So again, these might well be two complete sentences on their own if this is a period here. I went to Italy last summer and it was a wonderful trip. By removing the period and placing a comma there, we have gone halfway towards creating one more complex sentence. Unfortunately, we are still missing a coordinating fanboys conjunction. In this example, it is the conjunction and. So as well as the comma, we also need the conjunction. That brings to a close this third video presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.